Hello, this is Mike Richmond. It is Tuesday, January 23rd. And this is the lecture for week 1 of statistical programming in R. Let me get to my notes here real quick. Okay, so welcome to this class. Why are we using R? Well, I look at a lot of job openings just to kind of keep my fingertips on the pulse of what employers are looking for out there. And I'd say at least 70% of them say that you need to have some skill in statistical programming, whether it's, and they'll usually say something like in a package like R or equivalent. So R is a statistical programming software package. It includes the ability to create lots of visualization. It includes a programming language. So if you need to create routines, scripts to do the same sorts of analyses over and over and over again, that's very easy to do. And it has a lot of canned statistics routines to help you do analyses that, whatever, 30 years ago typically had to be done by hand. Maybe better go 40 back now, but had to be done by hand with a calculator, and we just didn't have a lot of ability to do that sort of stuff. So why are we using R instead of something else? Well, there are lots of statistical software packages out there. There's SAS, there's SPSS, there's MATLAB, there's JUMP, there's several more, and almost all of these are license-based, so they require a pretty heavy financial responsibility license. For example, I know that JUMP is about $1,600 a year. Well, we didn't want to burden students with that cost, so R is open source, and which is just it means it's free. It's widely available. Many people use it. So open source has good things and bad things about it. Obviously, the pros are it's free and it's very widely used. And as I said before, not very many job openings specify a computer program that has a license fee associated with it. But if they do specify anything, they'll all specify R. They'll say R and or Python. Python is something that you've done a couple weeks back, so you know what that's all about. Anyway, both open source tools and very available. Now, what are some of the cons? Well, because it's open source, documentation is sometimes great, and sometimes it's just frankly horrible. Also, anybody who wants to can create a mini program that will do, let's say, something simple like calculate a t-test or something like that. Well, there might be 17 different short programs that calculate t-tests out there already. There's nothing to prevent you from putting another one out there. The name may or may not be really intuitive. And frankly, it may not work. So as you're using, there's a lot of this stuff gets vetted pretty well. And if something's really bad out there or completely misleading, the community will jump all over pretty quickly. But that doesn't prevent you from running into something that's fairly new, that hasn't been vetted very well, or that just isn't going to get vetted for whatever reason. And again, there's no governing body that takes care of this stuff. So it's kind of like an honor system, if you will, more than anything. Some of the documentation, some people do some really, really great documentation. There are people that have videos out, short YouTube videos that say, hey, here's how you do this in R. So there's a lot of really good stuff out there, and there's a lot of really bad stuff out there too, stuff that's not documented at all, or that the documentation is just frankly wrong. But again, there's no way to distinguish what the good stuff is versus what the bad stuff is. So it's usually skill and experience will get to the point that you can, decide what's good and what's bad. Having said that, it's a pretty useful tool and very helpful. You will be surprised as you stroll around the web how much stuff is on websites that's actually created in R that you don't know it is because they just don't talk about it. But a lot of representations of graphical stuff. There's a lot of stuff that R is used to do. Okay, so This first week of R is 5 lessons. What will we go over? Well, we'll first of all talk about a little bit about why we're using R, and I know I've talked about that already. Very first thing you're going to go into after that is how to load R and then RStudio onto your computer. The instructions here are very clear, very plain, and this class was written pretty recently. It's only 3 or 4 months old, so it shouldn't be obsolete yet. Although there is the risk that anytime you're using an open source tool, that things change quickly and stuff can be different from what you've got going on. So Google is your friend here as far as this goes. If there's something in the instructions that aren't quite the way that they're talked about in the instructions, I would take 2 approaches. First approach is Google it and figure out if something's changed and there's a different way or a better way of doing it. And then second, make sure to notify myself. Say, hey, that in lesson 3, this part here, that instruction is obsolete. It's done differently now. And we will do a continuous improvement loop on the curriculum. So having said that, I do try to keep up with it, but I can't look at every single course thoroughly every week. So stuff's likely to slip in there that's a little bit changed. Second thing I want to talk about as far as R goes, you will find throughout the course of the curriculum after this course that there will be a lot of times that I'll refer to, okay, now we're going to do this sort of analysis. Now we're going to do this sort of a logistic regression, and you need to do part of it in R, and I won't give you explicit instructions on how to do it. And I know that's going to frustrate some of you, and I kind of apologize, but kind of don't. I apologize because I'm not trying to frustrate you. I'm not trying to, say, oh, here, just go figure it out for yourself. That's not my point here. My point is that's kind of part of the job. You don't, when you're working as a data scientist, you don't get a bunch of people to come to you with these really clean, very nice data sets and say, hey, can you do this analysis for me? I think I need a logistic regression, and here's my data. And you just go and say, okay, go do logistic regression, boom, 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 done, here's your results, good to go. That is not how this job goes. First of all, the data you get is going to be a big pile of crap that you're going to have to sift through, figure out what's important, what's not, make it look good. Anyway, I'm digressing a little bit with data wrangling, and we'll get to that later. You will not have anybody give you instructions on how to do this, and this includes any sort of manual. You will have to go and search that out. It's just the way things go these days. Nobody memorizes stuff anymore. Nobody has lookup books anymore. People just go and search stuff on the web. Again, some of it's great, some of it's really bad. So it's going to be a little bit of a challenge for you, but if an exercise says, okay, take these data and go figure out a logistic regression, and then give me the risk of having something happen. It's kind of wide open. You might have to go do a little bit of research to figure that out. Again, 2 purposes here. One purpose is that's how the job is, so you might as well get used to it now and get familiar with the ability. And number 2, I think people learn a lot better if they have to put a little bit of sweat and tears into getting stuff. Now, that doesn't mean I want you to be real frustrated all the time and spend a lot of time doing stuff that is really wasting your time and making work up. So I'm trying to find a good balance of, realities of the job versus, giving you too much stuff and not really helping you learn anything. Don't know if I've struck the right balance. Probably in a lot of cases I haven't, so we'll just kind of improve that as we go along. Okay, then some real basic topics come up right in the first few lessons here. How to assign variables, how to do simple calculation, how to use simple functions that are already a part of the routine. Then we'll get into a little bit deeper stuff. How do you create scripts? And a script is when you've got a program that you're going to run over and over and over again. You don't want to rewrite it every time. You want to, maybe you got 15 lines of code on a very simple script that goes and performs some sort of function. You want to be able to do that repeatedly. So you'll create a script, you'll give the script a name, and instead of going and calling all these individual functions, you just call the script and give it the inputs it needs, and it spits out what you need. We're going to talk about how to do for loops. So won't give much explanation there. If you've done any programming at all, you know what a for loop is. If you haven't, you'll learn about it very quickly. going to talk about learning how to create vectors using R. Vectors are very powerful and useful because quite often if you've got a set of data, it'll be stored in a vector or an array. A vector is usually a single row or a single column, if you want to think of it that way. And an array is multiple rows and columns. All right. And then to end the week off, if you're going to do 5 lessons this week, you're going to do some very simple plots and become familiar with using libraries. For instance, a lot of, so there's the basic R program, and then there's a bunch of stuff that, somebody might create a library. There's a library called ggplot2, for instance, in R. Somebody or a group of people created a library where it says, hey, we'd like to put a lot of the plotting tools here. So you can do scatter plots or histograms or, heaven forbid, pie charts or trend charts, all kinds of different graphs. Rather than have them in a bunch of million different places, they put them all in one place. And you have to actually load that library onto your PC because there are thousands and thousands of functions in R, and nobody wants to load it all on their PC. You only want to load the parts you have to have. But if what you want to use is not on the root program, and there's some stuff, but not a lot. There's all the basic functionalities there, but there's not a lot of other stuff. You might have to load a library onto your PC. So there's instructions on how to do that. And that is pretty much going to round out everything that happens for the first week. So I think I mentioned this before, but this was not written by me. I actually hired out a contractor, and he did a great job of putting it together. And I think it's very solid material. Lots of good examples, lots of pictures to see this is what it should look like and whatnot. So it's done very well. If you have questions, please let me know. If you have difficulties, please contact the mentor or myself, and we'll take it from there. So work hard, keep asking lots of questions, and have a great week. We'll talk to you later. Thanks. Bye.